Good afternoon, Dynasty owners, and welcome to another contract video breakdown. My name is Matt the Jerk, and let's get into it. Today, we're going to talk about the Green Bay Packers. We're going to continue with the same division we've been talking about for the past 2-3 weeks. We're actually going to be wrapping up the division today. So, Packers, I saved them for the last team in this division for one main reason, and that is because the news on Aaron Rodgers. I was just trying to delay that as much as possible in case we got any new breaking news. We haven't. It's actually probably getting worse from some of the reports that I've heard. So we'll jump right into it. I really don't have much in the way of news for you as opposed to just speculation. So we know that Rodgers is disgruntled with the Packers, and it's for a few different reasons that I can suspect. Obviously, only Rodgers and the team probably know the reasons. But the ones that I can come up with, first, the fact Packers haven't won a Super Bowl since 2010. Not only have they not won a Super Bowl since then, but they haven't even been in the Super Bowl. Been to the Super Bowl since that year as well. So very disappointing considering the talent they have on the team, including Rodgers. You know, he's not getting any younger. Just a very disappointing, 10, 11 years that they've had. Second is the fact that the Packers have not drafted a wide receiver or running back in the first round since 2002. Very surprising. I had to go back a lot further than I thought to find that stat. That player was Javon Walker, so, you know, negligible for Rodgers' career. He was drafted 3 years before Rodgers even was, so not really a playmaker, especially in his prime for Rodgers. But even since then, they've taken 0 running backs and wide receivers since Rodgers has been drafted, so really unbelievable. Additionally, they've only taken 5 wide receivers in the second round since Aaron Rodgers has been drafted. And they are Terrence Murphy, that was 2005, Greg Jennings, 2006, Jordy Nelson, 2008, Randall Cobb, 2011, and then Devontae Adams, 2014. So really all 5 of those names were big players, at least when they were in their prime, and Rodgers benefited from all of them for sure. But it still just goes back to the fact that the Packers organization has not invested in a big-time playmaker in the first round. It just hasn't happened. It's just something they don't do. And the final thing I want to talk about is, you know, the big elephant in the room is the fact that the Packers selected Aaron Rodgers' replacement in the 2020 NFL Draft. So I'm not going to badmouth the pick. You know, the Packers, clearly they saw that they wanted their future wrapped up. If they think that Jordan Love is their future, then why not go for it? But it just seemed a little odd to me that they were 1 game away from the Super Bowl. You know, all they had to do was win it was 2 years ago in the NFC Championship, and they would have been in the Super Bowl. And they really didn't change much from that team. They had most of their players coming back, and it seemed like, you know, adding an offensive weapon in the first round could have put them over the edge. But who knows? You know, obviously 2020 for the hindsight. But anyway, those are the 3 issues that I've come to realize with Rodgers and the organization. There's been rumors of a few other things, and I'm not going to get into those, but these are the main ones that I want to talk about. So the big question is, what happens next for Rodgers? Well, there's a few things. Really, I only see it going 2 different ways, and in the end, I settled on one, final option I think is going to happen. So, first thing is that he plays, and he sucks it up, and I'm sure he's not going to talk much throughout the season. He doesn't really do that anyway. He just plays the whole season. Second option, I think it's also unlikely, is that he sits out a portion of the 2021 season or all of it, and that's going to get expensive for both sides. I don't really see that happening. It's possible, like I said, it's definitely an option that he's probably considering. And the third option, which is the most unlikely, I think, is that he gets traded. Packers GM has already stated that he doesn't want to trade Rodgers. I think he actually said he's not going to trade Rodgers. So if you listen to what he says, it seems like a pretty shut case as far as getting traded. In the end, that's really all I got for you, just speculation for Rodgers. He's making $33.5 million. He's owned 70% of Dynasty owner leagues. Some people have already cut ties with him, obviously. We can see that percentage down to, down 30% from where he was. I don't know. I really don't know what to tell you. I would hold on to him if I owned him. He is available in a few of my free agent auctions. I just can't afford him. I would pick him up if I had the extra cap. So if you have the cap and you own him currently, I would hold on to him until we get further news. All right, so we had some free agents for the Packers, and let's see, I believe all of them have signed, yeah. So let's talk about them one by one. They actually all re-signed except for one player. So that player was Jamal Williams. We know that Jamal Williams, he signed with the rival Lions. He leaves behind about 120 carries, about 30 receptions. So Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon would look up to pick up the extra opportunities there. Allen Lazard, he was kind of a special case. So he was issued a tender by the Green Bay Packers. I did an article a while back, it's probably been half a year, about all these different tenders and free agent restrictions and stuff like that. So go back and read that if you want a little bit more of a breakdown on it. But essentially what it means is that Lazard was an exclusive rights free agent. He had less than 3 accrued seasons in the NFL. What that basically boils down to is that he has zero leverage in whatever his previous team wanted to do with him. So they can sign him for a league minimum contract, 1-year contract, and he has almost no say in the matter. He can't negotiate with any other teams. I mean, he can decline it, but that would pretty much mean the end of his career. So he really has no option in what he was going to do. So he'll be a cheap option, $675,000. It's a cheap wide receiver stash. Possibility of being the number 2 for Green Bay. Next one is Robert Tonyan. He's another one of special case, just not as extreme as Lazard. So Tonyan was a restricted free agent. What that means that he was able to negotiate with other teams if he was given a tender by the Packers, which they did. They gave him a tender. He was able to negotiate with other teams, and in the end, he ended up just coming back to the Packers and re-signing. So he signed his tender. He's going to make right at $3.38 million per 1 year. And he's gonna be a sneaky pick. You know, he's not gonna be a tight end 1. I'm gonna get to him a little bit later in the breakdown section. He's gonna be a sneaky pick later in drafts if he falls that late. Low salary, low ADP, make him a pretty scary tight end to draft later on in startups. And then the biggest signing for the Packers was the $12 million man, Aaron Jones. So he finished Dynasty Owners running back 5, despite missing 2 games due to injury. So the pay increase, we already know, we talk about all the time, it's going to tank his overall dynasty value. But if you owned him and continue to own him, you're going to feel pretty good about, where he's going to end up at the end of the season. He'll be a middle of the road, maybe even high tier running back 1. I could see him sneaking back up into running back 5 or higher again for the 2021 season. So contract breakdown today, we're only going to talk about one player, and I've actually already mentioned him, and that player is Robert Tonyan. So let's talk about Tonyan. I already told you how much he's going to make. He signed his tender. He broke out last season. A relatively unknown player. I mean, he came into the season as what people thought was going to be their tight end 1, but they didn't really know how it was going to shake out with so little time in the NFL. So it took a couple of weeks for people to start taking notice of him, but he had 5 touchdowns in his first 4 games. Couldn't be ignored after that. In the end, he finished as tight end 5. He had 52 receptions, 586 receiving yards, and 11 touchdowns. 11 touchdowns really stands out. I'll mention this later, but he tied with Kelsey for the most tight end touchdowns. So 11 really inflated those numbers. It's really what took him above tight ends, in his range, like Mark Andrews, Noah Fant, Mike Gesicki. Really pushed him over the edge. While those players had better averages for games, those tight ends, the touchdowns that Tonyan had really put him over the edge. So what I do want to mention, a little caveat, is that tight end 5, it's a little bit of a deceiving. So he did finish as tight end 5. That is completely true. But when you look at the numbers and how they break down, so Kelsey outscored Tonyan. Kelsey was tight end 1. He outscored Tonyan by 135 points. So your range from tight end 1 to tight end 5 is unbelievable how far that gap is. And then we also look at tight end 2, so Darren Waller. Tight end 2 outscored Tonyan by over 100 points. So where's that gap in between their tight end 3 to tight end 5? We know that those numbers are pretty skewed. We've talked about it before. The top tight end tier is obviously way more valuable than the tier drop off. So the point I'm trying to make is that the differences become more negligible when you drop down further for tight end. So I'm going to give you an example. So I compared tight end 5 through tight end 10, and I'll list them off for you. So tight end 5, Tonyan, 6 Andrews, 7 Gesicki, 8 Fant, 9 Hurst, and 10 Schultz. And this is for the 2020 season. And what I found is that the first thing I noticed is that all of these players were very close in both receptions and yards. So between tight end 5 and tight end 10, I think the minimum receptions was 52, so that was Tonyan, and the maximum was 63, so very close range for receptions. And you find the same thing for yards. Minimum yards was Hayden Hurst at 571, and the maximum was 703, so a very tight window for these players. And what really separates them, as I said earlier, is the touchdowns. But another thing that I noticed is that the difference, so I said before, the difference between tight end 1 and tight end 5, 138 fantasy points. Well, the difference between tight end 5 and tight end 10 is only 28.1 fantasy points. So as we start to get further down, away from that top tier, these tight ends get closer and closer together. And I mean, it's up to the dynasty owner to decide what the value is between, tight end 5 and tight end 10. Obviously, you want those 28 fantasy points per year. They're going to help you. They're not going to hurt you. But when you're taking a player that early in the draft, is it really worth it? And then the reality is that the statistic only gets worse the further down you travel. So the difference between tight end 5 and tight end 20 is only 60.2 points. So like I said, those 60 points, they matter, they count. But what are you really getting when you're drafting, you see tight ends, 3 tight ends go, you're taking 4. Is it really worth it as opposed to waiting and taking a tight end 20, tight end 25, who's going to get you maybe 60, 70 less points on the season, but you're not wasting an early draft pick? I don't know the answer. I can tell you what I would do, but I don't know that's always the right answer. I tend to wait on tight ends. Even if you get a Kelsey second tight end. At any rate, Tonyan's predicted to finish tight end 18 next season. As I said earlier, he's going to be a good tight end target later in the draft. And that's about it for me. So I appreciate everybody listening. Stay tuned for next week's article, and hope everybody takes care.